Okay, the file that I emailed you, okay, let me go over the SQL file that I sent you. If you open it up, I said use data analytics. I didn't create a database for you called data analytics, so we'll have to use one of our pre-existing databases, probably MIS 452, maybe MIS 452 student registration demo is what I'm going to use. So at the end of it, you can, of course, drop all the objects and tables so that it goes back to so MIS 452 student registration. In your case, you could use the one with your last name. At the end of it, you can drop it. Basically, I was looking to create something that I was initially thinking of using the student registration with course registrations, but I didn't have sufficient data in it. So instead, I decided to use this. It's basically a set of skills, very simple, like Python, R, SQL, statistics. These are this, along with data visualization, are considered the key. Python, R, or R. You don't necessarily have to know both, but some prefer both. And one of the nice things, if you install this Anaconda Navigator, you can see that it pretty much has both R Studio is the main development environment for the R programs, and Jupyter Notebook is the one that is typically used for Python programming in the data analytics world. Which then the nice thing is it downloads and installs most of the libraries that you would need. Okay, I'm going to, so these are, well, I guess these are already installed, everything that is Python related. If you want to add some other of these tools, you'll have to install them. And this I've not explored, but it's supposed to be a data visualization tool or option across data sets and files, so it's something that you might want to explore. Again, this is all of these I'm not going to get into, but I'll discuss the Jupyter Notebook and the Python programming part using. So I'm going to use this demo database to create these three tables, insert some sample data. I wanted to work with some numeric data here for salary year and salary amount. And then I have a procedure here. Now, one of the things you have to decide with data analytics, especially if you're working with millions of rows of data, is how much you want to keep transferring between the data source and your application where you're processing it. Okay, so for example, over here, I'm sending over the entire data set. Okay, so on the other hand, I could restrict it to a smaller data set by doing what? By sending in parameters, right? So this involves a lesser amount of data that gets transferred between the application where you're doing your data analysis and where the data is residing. So this is one basic decision you have to make. Here I've gone with a procedure that gets all of the data. So I'm just going to run this. So it should have created three tables with the data inserted and along with this procedure. So if I were to just test it by running, I don't have a test set up. It does a join across the three tables and gets back. It's just giving a sort of skill name, location name, and the salary amount by year. Okay. Again, it's somewhat simplistic, but I just wanted to give you some sense of working with Python. Okay. So once you have this data, I need to see whether I want, how much I want to get into this. There is, you can, as I said, use Python purely as a programming language, and I'll show that to you maybe after I go through this example where you can create classes. Maybe I'll discuss that a little bit after this. Okay. There are two ways you can get to, once you've installed and run this script, there are two ways you can get to the Python programming environment. One is just to launch it from here. On this machine, I've been having trouble creating the programs here, but if you're having your own laptop, it should work. It basically launches it to, you can see it opens up a browser window, and by default I'm running Chrome. Okay. Now, the other option is you can start up this Python environment by going to the command prompt. The reason I use that is I'm better able to navigate to some place where I want to store my files. So for example, let's say I just say data analytics discussion. I want to store my whatever I'm doing, the Python programs, inside this directory. So from the command prompt, I'll just navigate over to to E:\\, not able to E:\. Should I not switch to, okay, it's not \, it's just E:\, switches me to my to the drive where my thumb drive is located, and then I want to navigate over to Spring 2017 Data Analytics Discussion. So CD Spring 2017 / Data Analytics Discussion. Okay. And the reason I do it is once I'm in this space, so basically I navigated over, let me open up, navigate it to whichever directory, and then I give this command Jupyter, as in the planet, except it's spelled with a Y, notebook. So basically I'm doing my programming in notebooks. It opens up a notebook window on the browser. Okay, so if I do this, you can see that currently it's empty because I don't have anything in my in this particular directory in the thumb drive. The other way, as I said, was opening it up through using the navigator, which brought all of these other files in there. This is the root, so it goes to some root directory, and at least on this machine, it's preventing me from saving files, program files over there. And I think you can probably control where it goes through the environment variables. Anyways, those of you who have installed, are you able to get to this? I'm going to be over here. Okay. And once you're here, you can go to New, and you can see there are notebooks. And if you are interested in exploring R instead of Python, all that you need to do to see our notebooks is go to Anaconda, and then there is the navigator. Right here, if you install this, it will install the R packages that will allow you to create your R notebooks. So what I'm going to do is go to New, select Python 3 notebook, and I'm essentially in the Python programming environment. So so I don't have to have a sort of an elaborate, sophisticated Visual Studio type environment. I can just say things like A = 3, B = 10, A + B, and then if I want to print this, and if the way I run it is, we write our code in cells, so I can just run the cell, which gives the result. I could also run multiple cells. So it's a really neat and very easy to create environment. So there is really nothing other than, you don't need, as I said, you just use a browser and you can immediately run tests. Okay. You can also, a lot of books actually are being authored now just using this environment, using what's called Markdown. Is anyone familiar? It actually renders pretty well using, you can convert it into PDF or any other format. So it's actually a very nice environment. You can document whatever you're doing as Markdown. You can have headers. You're actually writing up fairly elaborate notes. Okay. since we don't have that much time, I'm going to go through how you can connect to the database, for which you have to install to each of the different DBMSs. The built-in database to Python is something called SQLite. Is anyone familiar with this? SQLite. It's actually, again, one of those fairly neat tools. You can access it. I don't know if it works out of any other browser, but if you have what's that, Firefox. Firefox. Okay. You can actually install. You can install an add-in and work directly with SQLite. It's very, very neat. So one of the things I've started to appreciate working with open source tools is how simple it is. You don't have to have elaborate tools like Visual Studio. So anyways, I won't do that right now. Okay, let's see. Okay, I'll not add that in. Yes.
So how did you get 13 to display?
What's that?
How did you get 13 to display underneath? I mean, how did you get it actually?
Yeah, I just ran the cell. So I think even if you didn't even print it out, if you just said A+B and ran it, you can run it multiple ways. You can either click on this run cell. You can go to cell, run cells, or there are shortcuts here. Right here, if you click on this, it opens the command palette, which tells you shortcuts. Like if you press Shift Enter, it will actually run it as well. Okay. So how do we connect to the database? For that, you need to have something that speaks between Python to SQL Server, and for that we need to install a driver. And the way you install it here, it's fairly straightforward. This tells it that this is not a Python command. It's going to go to the operating system. And so I forget what, Charles, do you remember what pip expands to? Python installer or something? Is it? It basically goes and gets a package. I think it's called some package installer. But basically we want to install, so this exclamation point pip install, and then it's the name of this, it's like a library or add-in that gets added on. It's ODBC. ODBC is a database connectivity program for Python, so it's ODBC. So I'll put this up on Notepad so you can type it here. Okay. So you need this to be able to have that communication between Python and SQL Server. So I'm going to just run this or execute it. You can execute it any way you want to. Okay, once you have, it will tell you it's downloading it. It's like using the package manager in Visual Studio. It basically goes and gets this package, installs, and connects it. Okay, once you have it, you have to import it. So import this ODBC, and I'll just import it as, it's Python ODBC, so I'll call it PODBC. Okay, so what's the equivalent in C# for import? Yeah, Charles? Using, so you're just using this particular library. Okay, so always run it to make sure that it has gotten imported. Okay. Are you So those of you who are following, are you able to do it? Okay. So you've now imported it. The next thing is setting up your connection. So let me just call this connection string. I'll call this, it's going to be, what did I call it? SRS. So SRS connection is the name of the variable. Now there is something that you should be noticing now. What is different about Python from C#? What, like when I use these variables, what have I not done which I would be forced to do in C#? Yeah. I would need semicolons. What else would I need? Yeah, I would have to initialize and declare it, right? So if I now said A equals test, and if I just run this, let's say I want to print A, you can see what happened. Initially A was holding an integer, now it changed to a string. Obviously there are benefits and potential dangers with this, but Python is a much more forgiving language compared to, anyway, so you don't have to declare the connection data type, and this, for this you have to sort of write it out, PO, then if you're able to see this, maybe I should increase the size. Okay. Okay, what I'll do is I'll just create some new cells, that way I can sort of okay, so what I need to do here is use this PODBC object dot, and there's a connect method built into it, and I have to give a lot of parameters here. I'm going to say you can either use single or double quotes, both work as strings. So I'm going to say driver, the driver I'm using to connect is the SQL Server driver. So this is the first parameter. The second, and all of this needs to come within the parentheses, within the double quotes. So my double quotes are going to be here. So driver is SQL Server. Then the server, the rest of it I think I can copy and paste from the connection string. That's pretty much exactly as this. So if you go to your web config, instead of saying data source, what we have to say is server is equal to this. It's going to be this with the semicolon. Okay. And then the next thing is, instead of initial catalog, their recommendation is to say database. So database is equal to, so each one is separated by a semicolon here, just as we did over here inside of our config. So this demo, and again, after this, everything else is the same, user ID and password. So I'm going to copy all of this. Okay, everything is inside the string. Don't leave any spaces at the end. Yeah, just database. So pretty much almost everything is the same except I have to specify the driver I'm using because this ODBC has multiple drivers, including to Oracle. So whichever database I'm using, I have to specify that particular database. Server, actually, I used the wrong terminology. In interviews, don't say database. What should I be calling this? Yeah, the database management system, the DBMS. The database is this database that's the repository for the data. And then the user ID and whatever the password is. Okay, so this should establish my connection. And again, I want to run this connection statement. It's saying it's not connecting, so there's something that I didn't specify correctly. Or login failed for this particular user. Okay. So I gave some parameter value that's not correct. Did you get an error, or did it allow you to log in? Okay, user right. Some of you it seems to have gone through, but for me it hasn't. So, student registration demo. Okay, I can't see anything wrong with this. Does anyone see anything that's different from what you have done? Josh, you said you logged in? You got the same error? The six?
So it says one thing to make sure your server authentication is SQL Server and Windows authentication mode. I guess that'd be in the database.
Yeah, but that's where is it? It's logging.
PWD instead of writing out the password.
Yeah, I think it is. Did I write it out as password here? Yeah, it's PWD. Let's see. Is it as simple as that? Okay, let me try that. PWD instead of password. Okay, sure enough, that's good. Okay, I guess now I don't know if I can keep reducing points for Josh after this. It's on anything. How did you notice that?
I Googled it.
Okay. Okay, so essentially, yeah, so now that we are connected to the database, what I'm going to do is, where is my, I want to I want to read from the database, and I can read multiple ways, but since I have a stored procedure, I'm going to use dot. So the way I do it is, and this is where the libraries come into play. I need to import another library. It's called pandas, as in the, I guess, the bear after the plural, but actually it stands for panel data, which is multi-dimensional data. So always you give some kind of suffix to refer to it by, and always run it so that you know that that library is accessible to you. Okay, and a lot of the methods are built into these libraries. So I want to retrieve the data into the main sort of the workhorse object that you use both in Python and in R is something called a data frame. So you retrieve the data into a data frame. So I'll just call this data underscore frame. By the way, you might have noticed that while I'm editing, it has this green outline. If I press escape, it changes from edit mode to whatever the command mode, and I can sort of move around or create more cells and so on. Okay, now the data frame, I retrieve it from the database. So there is this method called, so I'm referring to the Panda object here that's coming in from the library, and I'm going to use a method called read underscore SQL underscore query. This is the Python naming convention for methods and for variables. They separate it using underscore. Everything is lowercase. Okay, so I need to specify the SQL statement as well as the connection object. Okay, so what is the connection object I'm using? What's the name of the connection? I called it SRS connection. So this connection object, I call it SRS connection. And the SQL, I can either write it out entirely, the SQL string, like select from, but what did we decide to do? We are using the stored procedure, right? But we don't have parameters inside that stored procedure. We just called it, what did I call it? Proc find, proc find by skill and location. So this becomes, so I have my SQL value, and this is what I pass in to get into the database. And what else do I need to provide this? I just read it. If I had something with parameters, it becomes I would have to give the parameters as well. Okay, but just to make sure that I read something into this data frame, I can use this data frame dot head. Head gives the first 5 rows of whatever is read into the data frame, just for you to check if it's read it in properly. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this. Okay, so you should be, if it has worked, it should bring it back and display it. Do you have it? Okay. Okay, so now we have the, you can do a lot of things here, manipulate it, get the maximum and so on. So for example, if you just, you can do queries. So let's see, if you want to say, I want to get the skills and skills and locations where salary is about some amount, let's say 80,000. what I would do is I have to first provide the, so this is, let me make it, the comment is with the pound sign. So get all, well, list all where salary greater than or equal to 80,000. Okay. I'll just write this one query alone so you can see how this works. So I have to give the data which is in the data frame, and then I use square brackets, and within square brackets I give my query. So I have to say data frame dot salary amount greater than or equal to 80,000. Okay, so if I now run this, it would give me the list of all of the whatever the rows or data set that meets this. If I have multiple conditions, what I need to do is encapsulate it, each condition separately. So let's say I want to be in like San Francisco, then I want to add another condition, and the and is the single ampersand, not the double ampersand, and you have to put that again in a separate condition within parentheses, data frame dot whichever column, in this case location underscore name. And I think there's a contains operator, but I don't know whether it is there or not, so I'm just going to I'll go with something that's easier, like New York. Okay, and then at the very end there are two conditions, and and I have to have my open close square brackets, so which is at the very end there. Okay. So if I run this now, it will reduce it to salaries that are greater than whatever amount I specified in the New York area. So you can give, ideally you will put it into a method, send in parameter values, and then call this. Okay. And this is where I said you have to make a decision. Right now the data frame the data has been retrieved from the database, and it's all running on this Python environment. You want to keep going back and forth between the database and here by sending the parameters to the database or not. Okay, finally, I said, so you can do a lot of manipulation. You can also do things like find maximum. So let's see if I can just say, let me try this and see if this works. Data frame dot salary amount dot max. Let's see if this works. Okay. These kinds of operations are very hard to do in C# and other languages. So that's, and I think you'll have dot mean, I think it's the average, and then standard deviation. So all of the regular statistical operations, you can do them very easily here, and from experience I know that with C# and others it's significantly harder. Okay, so the last thing is some amount of data visualization. Again, there are packages built in, and the one that we'll use for this, and this is, okay, I'll just add these in so that you can, there is a package called Seabone, so you're going to import Seabone, or Seabone as SNS. They usually have some standardized naming conventions. You obviously can use something else if you choose to. and then there is another one for plotting called matplotlib. So it's matplotlib, and this is usually imported as MTL. And then the third library that's used, and the reason we are importing all these, Seaborn is actually built on top of the next two. So matplotlib dot pyplot as PLT. Okay, so these are the three, and the Seaborn uses these other two to do its work. Okay, so I'll just run this to make sure that it is being imported. Okay, after that, there are basically three statements. I'm going to first create the graph. You can either show the graph in this environment, or you can save the graph, and you can do something like what Stella showed us with generating a graph and then associating it with your application. So I'm just going to say this is a method from the Seaborn library, so SNS dot. It's called a facet grid. You can show various types of grids or plots. I'm going to say it uses the entire data frame data. The column on which I'm applying is skill name. So it's going to show, I can then add in other parameters, but for now I'll use just this. And then I'll say map this. So I'm creating G as the variable to hold this graph, and then I'm going to map it to a particular type of plot for which I use PLT. PLT comes from this Python plotting library, so I'll say plot PLT dot. It's going to be a scatter plot. Okay. And then I have to specify which are the two columns I want to sort of correlate. So I'm going to correlate the salary year with the salary amount. So for each of the skill names, I'm going to generate like a scatter plot. And then finally, I'm going to say show that plot. So let me just run this, and I have my scatter plot set up here with various labels. You can obviously make it. So if I wanted, so this is by skill name. I can then just copy paste it into the next cell. And I can do this by, instead of skill, let's say I change it to location. So these things are significantly harder in most other environments, and which is what make, and you can, if you explore a little bit more, you can combine these two. I can say, give the row, the column as location. So if I copy this, and you can change the size of the bubbles that are showing up based on amount of the salary amount, and then maybe you can color code it by location. So combining things. So those kinds of visualizations. So you can have a row and a column. So the row I can say is the other skill name. So I'm basically combining the two, which may not be that meaningful. So I'll just run this, and it will provide me, like it keeps adding to the number here. Okay. So one of the things, of course, you have to keep in mind, this becomes a very easy tool to generate a lot of different types of charts and plots, so you can sort of get carried away and create chart junk or whatever. So if you can, there is one guy who I should have introduced to you earlier. His name is Tufty. So when PowerPoint was introduced, essentially it made it very easy to generate all this chart junk. So the issue is the same principle here. You can generate a lot of different types of whatever plots, charts, and so on. So you have to be very careful with what you want to do, how much meaning is there in what you're generating. Anyways, this is a very fast introduction to Python data analytics, and you can use it for pure object-oriented programming. And I've actually been doing some of it. In some ways, it's actually more fun than using C# because you can immediately run it, see it, and so on. With things like C#, you have to build up a lot more before you can start doing something. So anyways, any questions on this? Okay, I felt I needed to at least introduce you. Now you're sort of having the Anaconda environment, some basics of this, and you can take it wherever you want to. There are some really nice courses in Coursera. Johns Hopkins has a sequence of 10 courses. I've done 3 or 4. It's mainly based off using R. Michigan has courses using Python. Yes.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but in what situation that a business uses professional, how do they get from Python to something that the users do?
Well, this what you are doing here, you can embed this into a web application where they are going to provide some parameters or some data sets. And then your program essentially processes it and comes and gives whatever, whether it's a chart or the data table, and then they have to interpret it. But if you are a data analyst, a data scientist, then you are doing pretty much all of this, and then the client is hiring you, whether it's Deloitte or somebody, and then they say, okay, so now what do I do? Google did a lot of what they called A/B experimenting. Do you know what that is? They would give, if you go into the site, they would randomly choose 2 users, and they will give 2 different options. One of the most famous cases, and it's in the political realm, so it was, do you know which was the first campaign that extensively used online campaigning? It was actually, you might not have, depending on a political persuasion, you may not like them anymore, but the people who ran Obama's campaign were from Google, and they did exactly this. They would set the button for, and it's like they would say something like contribute, or they would say donate. They'll change the names, they'll change the coloring, and they also tried to see. They found that if somebody had already, if they never contributed, then donate was a better word. But if they'd already donated, then contribute was. So they used to do this kind of testing. So you can do it, and then you can say, well, use this. So those kinds of things you can apply to. But I think we should potentially have a course in our program which actually gets into this stuff. Maybe you can come back when like I keep telling Mike to come back to. But once you start working, you'll never come back. I don't see people. I think you get too busy. But the one thing is, if at all you felt there was any benefit to the program, the only thing I would ask for is I don't want money or anything. Just connect back to the next generation of students, so that's usually the best way to keep the connection going. So that's my only request. And I don't know why I'm making this request, because I might not even be here. Hope, well, 3-4 years from now. But the thing is, one of the things I have always felt is something you don't have to be there, but you want whatever is good about the program or whatever you did to continue, regardless of who is there or not. Anyways, if you have any questions, let me know, and I'll try to be posting some of the data analytics videos I'm making on a YouTube playlist. But honestly, these people do a much better job than I. Johns Hopkins, University of Michigan, and all of them have a very strong health sciences background, because that's where statistics originated, at least for data analysis. Okay, I'll stop now. I didn't mean to spend an hour. I'll come around to, if you have any project